everyone, welcome back. Ever caught your dog, like, totally snubbing that fancy ceramic bowl you got them? You know, the one with their name on it and everything?
Yeah, those bowls are always more for the humans, aren't they?
Totally. But seriously, have you noticed how they often seem to prefer that old, beat-up plastic dish instead?
Makes you wonder what's going through their furry little heads.
Right. Well, today we're diving deep into the world of, believe it or not, dog bowls.
Should be interesting. I've got my notepad ready.
Me too. And some interesting notes from our listeners as well. Plus, we've got some fascinating insights from a really cool website called Onlinehund.dk. It's a Danish site. They're like obsessed with dogs over there, and they have a ton of expert advice.
Oh, cool. International dog expertise. Love it.
Right. And we're going to connect all that to, your dog, our listener's dog, figure out what makes them tick when it comes to mealtime.
I'm always excited to see what kind of specific situations people are dealing with and whether we can offer some useful tips.
Absolutely. So one of the things that really jumped out from Onlinehund.dk was how picky dogs can be about their bowls. And we're not just talking about the material, although that's definitely a factor. Like, some dogs are all about that stainless steel life. Others, maybe they're plastic purists.
Yeah, kind of like how some people swear by those fancy metal water bottles.
Totally. But for dogs, it goes beyond just the material. It's about how the bowl feels when they're eating.
That makes sense, actually. Dogs experience the world through their senses, just like we do, so something like the texture of a bowl against their nose or whiskers could totally affect their enjoyment of a meal.
Exactly. And speaking of how dogs experience the world, we got a note from a listener who is thinking about trying, get this, scatter feeding their dog on the lawn.
Interesting. Seems harmless enough, but
There's a but coming.
there is. Onlinehund.dk had a few things to say about that, and let's just say they weren't exactly endorsing the idea. And for good reason.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by their reaction, to be honest. I thought, fresh air, open space, what could be bad about that?
Right, sounds idyllic. Until you remember, dogs tend to have what you might call an indiscriminate palate, particularly when it comes to anything on the ground.
Oh, you mean like how they'll eat pretty much anything they find on a walk?
Precisely. And Onlinehund.dk highlighted just how risky that can be, especially when you're talking about a lawn.
Well, and our listener mentioned their dog already thinks anything on the ground is like a gourmet treat.
Which is adorable in a way, but also a little terrifying when you think about what might be lurking in the grass.
Yeah, like what kind of dangers are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, those seemingly harmless garden slugs, they can actually carry lungworm parasites, and those can be really dangerous for dogs if they're ingested.
Ah, lungworm. Okay, that's definitely not something I want my dog anywhere near.
Yeah, those slugs are silent but deadly. So yeah, Onlinehund.dk definitely advises against using the lawn as a giant dog bowl.
Makes sense. It's funny how something that seems so simple, so natural, can actually be like a recipe for disaster.
It's all about those hidden dangers. But hey, at least now we know. And speaking of knowing, did Onlinehund.dk offer any alternatives? For folks who like the idea of scatter feeding but want to keep their furry friends safe.
They did, actually. They recommend bringing the whole treasure hunt indoors, like scatter the food on the floor or maybe use a food mat.
I like that. Still lets the dog use their natural foraging instincts, but in a controlled environment.
Right. No lungworm surprises. And speaking of understanding your dog's needs, we've got another listener who wrote in about their dog who, well, inhales their food, like gone in 60 seconds.
I know the type. The canine vacuum cleaner.
Exactly. So for our speed eating friends out there, Onlinehund.dk had a great suggestion. Puzzle feeders or slow feeding bowls. Have you ever used those?
Oh yeah, those are great. Turns mealtime into a little bit of a game, which is mentally stimulating for the dog. Plus, it slows them down so they don't end up choking or, wearing their dinner.
Exactly, because as we all know, those post-dinner vomits are never fun for anyone involved.
The worst.
But this is where it gets really interesting. Onlinehund.dk highlighted something I'd never really considered before. Your dog's bowl preferences, as in which bowl they prefer, could actually be telling you something deeper about what's going on with them.
Ooh, okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So, for example, if your dog consistently avoids a certain type of bowl, or if they're always trying to pick food up off the floor, even when they have a perfectly good bowl available, it could be a sign that there's something going on with their teeth.
Like a cracked tooth, or something making it uncomfortable to eat from a certain angle.
Exactly. It might seem like a small thing, But those little quirks can actually be huge clues about your dog's overall health and well-being.
It's all about learning to speak their language, right? Those subtle cues they give us can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And that's why, as always, that open line of communication with your vet is so important.
Couldn't agree more.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into this surprisingly complex world of dog bowls, I think the biggest takeaway here is observation. Like, really paying attention to how your dog interacts with their food and their bowls.
Because you never know. That one little thing you notice might be the key to understanding your furry friend even better.
Exactly. And on that note, I'll leave you with this. Have you ever thought about how much your dog actually enjoys the experience of eating? Like, not just the food itself, but the whole ritual of it. Think about it. It might just give you a whole new perspective on your four-legged best friend.